You absolutely must have a BMC for your new venture in 2024. A BMC is a business model canvas. In this video, I'll walk through this simple framework that can be used for any type of startup or side hustle this year. We'll also look at an example of a food truck based on the film Chef with Jon Favreau, as we see what a business model canvas would look like for a food truck like Jefe Cubanos. You'll want to stay until the end when I reveal a secret that you can use to create an entire business model and plan in less than 2 minutes. Let's get started. So what is a business model canvas? Let me start by saying that there are many different versions of the business model canvas with a range of differences in applications. But for this video, I'm going to use the most popular version produced by a group called Strategyzer. This particular version was credited to the Swiss business theorist Alexander Osterwalder, who initially introduced the model and popularized it with the help of 470 collaborators. The BMC is a 9-box model that strives to tell the story of any successful venture in simple yet comprehensive terms, while making it easy to adjust and adapt the business model as founders learn more about their customer, their market, or their product. Here's how it works. Here's the Strategyzer business model canvas. Let's start with everything that's on the right side of the page as you see it. Things like the customer segments, the value proposition, customer relationships, channels, and revenue streams. Everything on this side of the model relates to the customer and how you're going to generate revenue through the business. When you look at the left side of the model, you have key activities and resources, key partners, and also cost structures. This has to do with everything you need to do to run the business and the costs of running the business. So together you have the opportunity to see the whole business in terms of how you interact with customers, how you deliver value, all the things you have to do that, and how you're going to be able to make profit once you offset the revenues with the costs of the business. Let's take a closer look at each one of the boxes on the business model canvas. The two that I always like to start with are the customer segment and the value proposition. This is the heart and soul of the business model, and in my opinion, if you don't get these two right, the rest doesn't really matter. So the customer segment really zeroes in on who it is that you really are making your product for. Who is this person or this group of people that has a problem that you can solve? Often customer segments are less about what traditional marketers call demographics, like where people live and how much money they make, and more about their mindset. What is it about the way that they think or the things that they value that they hold in common as a group? Almost in the way that they would self-select to be part of this group. So this could often be those that are really avid sports fan or fans of a particular team, or perhaps really enjoy a particular TV show and feel part of the larger community around it, or a movie series like Star Wars or Marvel Comics. These are all good examples of customer segments that share a psychographic connection. Ideally, you try to come up with a name for this group that's very, very specific about who they are and what it is they value. Next, we have the value proposition. The value proposition is all about what it is that really drives somebody to make a decision to either desire or actually purchase or use your particular solution. And a lot of times the value proposition is more than just the features of the product, what it does. Often I will see those that are building a business model canvas list the features of their product as their value proposition. But what I always encourage everyone to do with a value proposition is to get really, really clear on what need the solution is solving for the person. Think of it as addressing a pain, helping them to relieve or alleviate a pain, or achieve some kind of a gain that they can't otherwise achieve without your solution. The best value propositions get into the very psychological, emotional, and mental connection that a person in the customer segment has for your particular product. So fear oftentimes becomes the problem that you solve. It could be anxiety that you're relieving. It could be that you're helping them to achieve a lifelong dream. Things like fear of missing out can be a good example of something where someone doesn't want to miss out on something really great that everyone else is experiencing. So these are examples of how you can really drive into a value proposition that addresses a very deep psychological need or desire for the customer segment. The customer relationship is all about how much you engage with or interact with your customer. This can be a high-touch relationship, a medium-touch relationship, or a low-touch relationship. What I mean by that is a high-touch relationship is someone that you interact with a lot. you have direct involvement with. There's oftentimes direct conversations with a person or a group of people. This usually is the case when someone walks into a retail store. There's a high touch relationship because they're going to get to know the person that is there helping them, especially if they come back over and over again, like a cafe or a coffee shop. A low touch relationship might be typical of a cloud-based software product where there isn't a lot of interaction directly with a person, but as a customer, they're going in and they're using the product, but they're not interacting a lot with the actual producers of the product. Channels are about how do you connect with your customer, how do you deliver value to them, and how do you interact with them. A good example of this would be an app that runs on a mobile device, like an Apple iPhone or an Android device. The channel becomes the iStore or the App Store because that's how the customer gets the product and how they're actually able to use the product. Other examples of channels are wholesale distribution, where you sell to a middle business of some sort that in turn sells to retailers, and then those retailers sell to the customers. This would be another example of a channel. A third example is e-commerce, where a website is set up and you're selling the products through an e-commerce channel or a marketplace like Amazon.com. Finally, on this side of the canvas, we have the revenue streams. How are you going to generate revenue from the customers through the delivery of your product? It may be that they pay you directly for the product and it's a purchase. They may pay you fees for services. They may pay for access to something like a website or a software as a service product. They might not pay at all, and you may deliver a service to this customer for free, but someone else is footing the bill for some reason. This may be someone who's paying for advertisement on your website, or maybe someone who's paying to use the data. Often Facebook has been criticized for the way that they used personal data, but that is really how they monetize their model. And so these are examples of data monetization in ways that you could use that data to bring value to someone else who may be willing to pay for it, even if the primary customer isn't paying for it. Now let's look at the left side of the canvas. Over on the left side, we're looking at things like the key activities. These are the things that you're going to do within the business to fuel the business, to make it run, to get customers, to deliver value to customers, and to keep them as customers on an ongoing basis. Key resources are really about everything that you need to have to be able to run the business effectively. You may be a key resource to the business, particularly if the business is somehow built around your expertise or intellectual property. It may also be that you need specialized equipment or different types of capabilities, access to supplies and resources that will make it possible for you to run the business effectively. The next box are key partnerships. These are the companies, individuals, or organizations that provide you with the things that you need to run your business effectively. This could be a key supplier where you need to go to get the materials that you need for your product. This could also be platforms that you run on, perhaps an e-commerce platform or something like that where you market your products. It could also be services that make it possible for you to deliver your products on time, like FedEx or UPS that provide delivery services. But these partnerships are key in your ability to deliver the value that your customer segment is looking for. Finally, the cost structure. If you look at each of the boxes on the left side of the canvas, you really see things that will cost you time or money. And so your cost structure is identifying all those things that it will take to run the business. This can be everything from your infrastructure. It can be the equipment that you need to buy or lease. It can be the supplies that you need to buy. It can be your employees or contractors that are actually doing work for you. It could also be outsourcing fees. All of these fees need to be captured in the cost structure of the business so that you make sure in the end that you're able to make a profit on running the business. So finally, if your revenue streams are bringing in more income than the cost that it takes to run the business, you're making a profit margin, and that is an indicator of a successful business idea. Doing the math here is really important, making sure that you've accounted for all the potential revenue streams and all of the cost factors. Also considering where things could go wrong, where costs could be higher or revenue streams could be lower, to make sure that the business is viable and that you can make a healthy profit. To show an example, I'll walk through the business model of a food truck. I'm going to base this on the film Chef, starring Jon Favreau. This is one of my favorite founder films and a great example to see how the business model canvas works when it's put in action. This film was loosely based on Chef Roy Choi and the food truck movement that emerged around 2014. Jon Favreau played the character Carl Casper, a frustrated head chef of a five-star restaurant who wanted to create new things in the culinary arts but was restricted by the owner of the restaurant who wanted to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. In an effort to reconnect with his teenage son Percy, Carl quit his job and together they restored a food truck making Cuban sandwiches and yuca fries. Once it was ready, they decided to drive from Miami to LA, making stops all along the way. Percy's social media engagement along the way leads to hundreds of eager foodies at every stop awaiting the sandwiches and wanting to be part of this phenomenon. So let's map out El Jefe's Cubanos food truck using the business model canvas. For starters, we have their customer segment, and I'm going to call these foodies with too much screen time. Foodies because they're really looking forward to learning about this new food item and to try this sandwich. At the same time, they're spending a lot of time on social media. And so together, Carl and Percy are bringing a very unique value proposition to this very specific audience, even though these individuals, though they have a common mindset, are spread out across the entire country. So let's talk about the value proposition. The most obvious thing is they're interested in the opportunity to try the best Cuban sandwich of all time. This is a game. They want to have this game creator of trying out this sandwich. But there's more to it. They want to be part of this unique and engaged community. Online, Percy's posting about the story, and it's showing their journey along the way and all of the different people that they encounter along the way. And as a result, more and more people want to get involved and want to be part of what's happening. So they're more likely to travel to be there when the truck arrives so that they can be part of this community and try out the sandwich. Third, there's a fear of missing out. As this group of individuals sees more and more buzz happening around this food truck, the desire to be part of it is also paired with the fear that they might miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So as Percy and Carl traveled from Miami all the way to LA, all the stops along the way, the individuals in those areas only had one chance to be part of this. And so they were there would be a fear of missing out if they were not to be able to join. So let's talk about customer relationships. Is this a high-touch relationship or a low-touch relationship or somewhere in between? I'm going to call it a high-touch relationship because there's really this kind of meet the owner mentality. People are engaging in social media, they're interacting directly with Percy, and they're following what's happening. And that might be a low touch or a medium touch relationship in one sense, but they're actually trying to go to where the truck is and interact directly with them. And so I'm going to call this a high touch relationship, even though a lot of the social media engagement might in and of itself make it a low or medium touch. Now let's talk about channels. The social media platforms that Percy is using is absolutely a big factor in the channel here because it's a way to communicate, identify people that are part of this persona, this customer segment, and to engage with them and to get them interested. And then, of course, as they're choosing their locations and scheduling their stops, it's giving this group of people information about how they can be part of everything that's happening. So here we have the revenue streams. This is really sandwich sales and add-ons. So let's say they're able to draw 150 to 200 customers a day. And let's say that each one of those customers on average spends $12. That's $2,400 a day. If we multiply that times 200 days in a year, that would be $480,000. That sounds like a fantastic revenue stream. Of course, making their road trip just once, it might be difficult to fill the schedule for 200 days. But if they were able to continue this process, there's a very strong, healthy revenue stream available. And they can even increase revenue streams as they add more things to the truck that they could sell. Maybe if they also added other revenue streams like merch that could be purchased online or something like that, they could increase revenue even beyond what they're able to deliver through the food truck. So now let's get into key activities. In key activities, these are really the things that you do to make the value and to deliver the value to the customers. So things like the recipe would be a key activity. In the beginning, we see Carl coming up with the perfect recipe for the sandwich, the Cuban sandwich that would become their signature thing on the menu. Well, the recipe is going to become actually a key resource, but in the development, that's a key activity, figuring out what the product is and testing that with the market. Next is a repeatable process, coming up to a way that they can create that same sandwich experience over and over and over again and quickly when they have a long group of people waiting in line for the sandwich. Next, key activities are identifying key locations where there's lots of people that are going to be interested in coming to the food truck and buying the food. And so identifying those is really important, and then communicating with the people in that region. This is where we're going to be. This is when we're going to be there. And using that social media engagement to draw those crowds and make sure there's long lines of people ready to buy the sandwiches. Key resources are anything you need to be able to make the whole business possible. As I said, the recipe will become a key resource once it's available. Also, the food truck itself. It has to be outfitted. You have the chef, the expert, the person who can create the food. That's Carl. And then you also have the social media presence. Percy is creating this. His presence, his following becomes a key resource to the business as they move from location to location and draw crowds together. Next, key partners. First, the truck owner, who incidentally is the ex-husband of Carl's ex-wife that was in between It's a Whole Big Thing, gotta watch the movie to figure it all out. Tony Stark makes a brief appearance. Just kidding. Robert Downey Jr., of course. So we see just a little bit of humor and levity in the situation, but the owner of the truck is a stakeholder in this, and so that's a key partner because Carl didn't have the resources to buy a truck or to outfit a truck, and so that's one key partnership. Also, food suppliers. There's not a lot of discussion in the film about food suppliers, but to be able to generate this many sandwiches consistently over time, you'd have to have a really good food supplier that was flexible and able to get the materials to the truck, particularly as they're on the move. Another key partner in this particular case would be the social media platforms that Percy is using along the way to draw attention. So when we think of TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, any kind of social media platform, these can be powerful partners and ultimately channels to reaching customers. And so this becomes a key part and key partners for the group as they're moving along. So let's look at the cost structure for this business. First, we have the truck restoration. Now, one advantage Carl and Percy have that most people don't is they were able to use this food truck without having to pay for it. So it was in bad shape and they had to do a lot of work to get it outfitted and cleaned and ready to use. And then they had to get it painted and brand it with the Jefe Cubanos branding on the side and everything else. But let's say they spent $2,000 doing all that restoration. That is much, much cheaper than the $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 it might cost to buy a food truck and start from scratch. So they have this huge advantage of being able to start with this key resource, the truck, and have it outfitted. Now, fuel. Let's say they're spending $60 a day for fuel, and let's say they keep moving for the whole 200 days we talked about. That would come out to about $12,000. It might even be more than that if they're traveling long distances at a time. Next, we have food materials. I'm going to estimate about 30% of their sales is actually the cost of the materials that it takes to create the food. $144,000 if they follow the pattern that we talked about in the revenue stream. So that's a big chunk of cost, and that takes a lot of the punch out of those revenue streams when you think about how much impact that has. Also, supplies. All the things you need to go along with the sandwiches to make sure, and whether it's oil or supplies for the fryer, whether it's napkins, whether it's different paper products and those kinds of things. So supplies are going to be an ongoing expense, usually tied to the amount of revenue generated. I'm going to say about 5%, $24,000. Now I've thrown in labor. They were all doing their own labor, and so they could split the proceeds at the end. But let's assume that this business over time to continue is going to need paid staff. And so using $15 an hour with someone working, I've estimated about $19,000 for a part-time employee to work in the business. So that gives us total costs of a little over $200,000. So when we look at that together, about $480,000 in revenue streams coming in, about $200,000 in costs, about $279,000 is the profit margin. That's a pretty healthy profit for this business. All indications are this is a very viable business if you can operate it on a consistent, regular basis at these revenue levels. So there you have it. That's an example of the business model canvas based on the movie Chef. Now, before we wrap up, just a few benefits of using a business model canvas, and I want to walk through these with you. First of all, it's a quick view of a business or a venture that doesn't take a lot of time to produce and gives you the whole picture all in one place. Second, it clarifies who your customers are, and you can update this based on your customer development activities. The more you learn about your customer segment, the more details that you can include about who they are and what it is that they really need or want from you. It also helps you to focus on the value proposition. What is it that the customer wants or needs from you on a deep psychological level? Where are the points of pain relief? Where are the gain creators that you're going to be able to produce for them? Next, it identifies what is really needed to get the business up and running. And finally, it confirms the financial viability of the venture in terms of profit and loss, at least to the degree which you can determine by estimating ahead of time what's going to be involved. So here's the thing. The journey of creating a new venture is more important than just an artifact. And so therefore, when you're thinking about a business model canvas, when you're getting started, any shortcut that you can find can be really helpful as you test out your assumptions. I'll now share a secret to coming up with a comprehensive business model and plan in less than 2 minutes. Check out gozigzag.com. This is an AI tool that allows you to generate an entire business model or test one that you've already formulated in just minutes with a simple single prompt. Here's a quick demo. And like most AI, the more detailed the prompt you have, the better results you're going to get. But even if you prompt with something simple, you can get a completed lean canvas, which is a little different than the Strategyzer business model canvas, but same idea. I'll maybe compare these in a future video. But it's going to give you a plan to test your assumptions, branding, naming ideas, and more. Running a model usually only takes about 90 seconds to reveal all of this information. So check out the link below if you want to try it out. And in a future video, I'll run through a little more detailed review and analysis of Go Zigzag. A business model canvas is one of the most important frameworks in any starter's toolkit. So the time spent developing a BMC or even leveraging AI tools like Go Zigzag will pay big dividends as you launch and grow your new venture. Learn more about business model creation with AI in my video interview with Go Zigzag founder Scott Ford. Click on the link below to check it out. Keep going.